copies of all the PowerPoint. Um, so as I said, we'll provide you guys with all copies of the PowerPoint presentation, any useful documents that we talk about, and information that we discuss, as well as the notice of grant opportunity and um, a frequently asked questions document that will include um, the uh, recording, a link to the recording of this presentation, so you can reference back to it, share it with anybody on your team that maybe wasn't able to join us, or use it for any other needs that you might have. The recording will be through YouTube, so we transfer this Teams meeting over to YouTube so that it's easily accessible and we can send it out timely. So you should get all that information from our team within the next 24 to 48 hours. It all depends on how quickly they can upload it up to the YouTube website. But as far as today, welcome. We're here to talk about our fiscal year 24 pre-apprenticeship and career education round two grant program. We have a notice of grant opportunity that came out a couple weeks ago. This is our first of two technical assistance workshops for the PACE grant. Um, and so we'll get into some of the specifics in reference to pre-apprenticeship and the grant and the notice of grant opportunity itself specifically. We'll also then provide you with some details on next steps, what you need to complete in order to get the application opened for you, and how and what we do as far as the process for completion of getting applications submitted and moving forward to grant if you're awarded funding. So first things first, my name is Bill Sarbuck. I am the supervisor here in the Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. The Pre-Apprenticeship and Career Education Grant Program did have a round one for PACE. We issued a little over $2.5 million in that round to 7 grantees, and we're hoping to have a similar round two here, but ultimately we have a 2 million available in this second round of PACE. So first off, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an understanding of what the Office of Apprenticeship is, where we came from, and what apprenticeship looks like here in New Jersey at this point, since Governor Murphy took office. So in March of 2018, Governor Murphy announced the development of the Office of Apprenticeship within the state of New Jersey, as well as the creation of the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. The Office of Apprenticeship is housed within the New Jersey Department of Labor, and the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network, we are a part of that. We are a partner within the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. That includes the United States Department of Labor, as well as any recipients of grant funds or anybody else who's providing any services related to registered apprenticeship. Our mission as the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network is the creation of the Office of Apprenticeship works closely with USDOL to serve as a one-stop shop for employers, nonprofit, secondary, and post-secondary institutions that are interested in developing apprenticeship opportunities. We support new and expand on existing pre-apprenticeship and USDOL registered apprenticeship programs in New Jersey, and we establish pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs in non-traditional high-growth occupations and sectors through grant programs like our GAINS program and our PACE program, which we're here to speak about today. We expand on New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. We expand the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network so that we can facilitate interactions between industries, educational institutions, training providers, and job seekers. And we work to better align post-secondary adult education and occupational training to meet the labor demands unique to New Jersey and develop career pathways that lead to economically sustainable wages. We help apprentices earn college credits, access to robust career counseling, and an increased diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship programs. And we look to remove economic barriers to training and upskilling through targeted investments such as these types of grants. The New Jersey Apprenticeship Network, the vision of the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network is to develop sustainable talent pipelines by aligning pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs with the needs of employers, training providers, and job seekers. New Jersey Apprenticeship Network is focused on driving economic development through skills and educational attainment, concentrating efforts on sector-focused demand-driven training and educational programs that lead to better paying careers and advanced credentials, as well as skills attainments. And we develop an ecosystem that provides multiple years of economic support to businesses and individuals for occupational skills training, leading to sustainable wages and upward mobility for workers and increasing talent pipelines for employers. So As you'll notice when you read through the notice of grant opportunity, you'll see a lot of concentration. Sorry, I have to mute somebody. We have some. If you can, please try to keep yourselves muted at all times. It helps to not distract and move the presentation away from what we're trying to accomplish. Um, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat at any time. You don't have to wait till the end to put them in the chat. You can put them in whenever you'd like to. Um, and we will give you the opportunity to uh, open yourself and take the mic and ask any questions verbally if you need to. But sometimes it's easiest to put it in the chat as we're going through. It's hard to remember all the information that we're providing because there's going to be a lot. So you'll notice within the notice of grant opportunity that we have a lot of references within it to sectors, industry clusters, targeted populations, and that we, in some way, shape, or form, in a lot of places, also speak to the grant being more favorable towards those who serve certain target populations or who are trying to place individuals or work to train individuals in specific industry clusters. That is the case with PACE as well. And we anticipate that some of you will fall into those, but it's not mandatory that you go in any of those targeted areas. It's just something that we try and concentrate on because it is a focus of our New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. So what is registered apprenticeship? I will tell you right now that a lot of people think they understand registered apprenticeship, but they don't quite clearly understand what the expectation of a registered apprenticeship program is. So this definition will hopefully help. Registered apprenticeship means that it's registered and approved by USDOL and provides classroom and on-the-job training in an occupation recognized as an apprenticeable trade that meets the program standards of enrollment and graduation under 29 CFRS 229.6. Ultimately, registered apprenticeship programs are training programs that provide classroom instruction and on-the-job training simultaneously, all while an individual is employed and earning an income. The expectation of that training program is that the individual will become a part of a part of that employer's future earning potential, because ultimately they will be trained appropriately by that employer. They have the opportunity to receive credentialing that is nationally recognized and can be used in anywhere across the country, which will ultimately benefit that apprentice. But at the end of the day, the benefits are on both sides, both for the apprentice and for the employer, because the expectation is that the individuals that they're hiring will have a little more of a connection to that employer and want to stay with that employer for a longer period of time. But beyond that, that they will be trained appropriately based on what the needs and the requirements are of that employer. So components of a registered apprenticeship are its employer and industry involvement. It is actually employer industry driven. Related technical instruction, which is what we call classroom instruction. Sponsor employer, or which is the employer would be the on-the-job learning provider. An apprentice, and then a progressive wage structure for skill gains. Those progressive wage structure would allow for the apprentice to receive an increase in pay as they become more valuable to the employer. These are some current figures on where New Jersey is right now with registered apprenticeship. Currently, New Jersey has 8,658 active apprentices, 1,297 total registered apprenticeship programs that are in New Jersey. Uh, New Jersey's, since Governor Murphy took office in January 2018, New Jersey's registered 686 new registered apprenticeship programs, which is over 100% statewide increase. We've hired 17,624 new apprentices and issued 8,943 new industry recognized certifications of completion. According to data from the last quarter 2017, New Jersey has the total number of apprentices in New Jersey has increased by approximately 1,875 apprentices, which equates to a 28% net statewide increase. So now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Lauren Kremper DiFilippo, who's going to speak more specifically about the PACE grant and the notice of grant opportunity.
Hello, everyone. So, Pre-Apprenticeship and Career Education, or PACE, the mission of the program is to create a pipeline of qualified individuals and enable them to transition into sustainable career pathways, present opportunities to underrepresented and/or disadvantaged populations, and remove barriers to training, drive economic development through skills and educational attainment, and promote the value of pre-apprenticeship and registered apprenticeship programs. The elements of pre-apprenticeship is an approved training and curriculum, strategies for long-term success, access to appropriate support services with a one-stop connection, promote greater use of registered apprenticeship, meaningful hands-on training that does not displace paid employees, and facilitated entry and/or articulation. Please note that as an applicant, you must have an established connection to at least one registered apprenticeship program or sponsor.
To add clarity to that final statement, you actually have to have a partnership or with at least one registered apprenticeship sponsor, and that registered apprenticeship has to already be approved by USDOL by the time in which your application is submitted. Reason being, it's a pre-apprenticeship program, so the expectation of you being capable of placing them into a registered apprenticeship program has to be there at application submittal. Uh, in order for us to have any expectation that you're going to be capable of placing them within a registered apprenticeship program in New Jersey. So just for clarification purposes.
Career apprenticeship programs that target high growth, high vacancy, or emerging industries are highly encouraged to apply, including but not limited to the following targeted industry sectors: advanced manufacturing, biopharma and life sciences, energy, utilities and infrastructure, retail, hospitality and tourism, financial services, insurance, transportation, logistics and distribution, information technology, cybersecurity, renewable energy, green economy, healthcare, STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, construction and building trades, including lead abatement, public service, educational services, and/or early childhood education. Note that organizations awarded fiscal year 2024 Round 1 PACE contracts are not eligible to apply for fiscal year 2024 Round 2 PACE funding. Round 2 applications are open to those not funded in fiscal year 24 Round 1, as well as new applicants. PACE aims to strengthen access to registered apprenticeships for individuals by recruiting from targeted populations and providing appropriate services to enable participation. So some of the targeted populations where greater weight will be given to proposals able to recruit from the following populations: women, minorities, youth, unemployed, vocational school and post-secondary students, ex-offenders, veterans, persons with disabilities, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act or WIOA eligible individuals, and or underrepresented populations. Support services are that include but are not limited to childcare, transportation, obtaining a driver's license, expungement programs, communicating a criminal background to employers, housing services, addressing substance abuse, obtaining high school equivalency diploma or GED, mentoring, guidance and counseling, and or financial literacy.
These supportive services that are listed here can be included within how you budget out your funds if you wanted to utilize some of the PACE funding in order to cover supportive services, or you could utilize other resources, whether it be through the One Stop or through other avenues throughout your counties and communities, or through your organization on your own.
Funding and contract information. Funding for fiscal year 2024 Round 2 is expected to be $2 million and is contingent upon availability of funds. The contract length will be 18 months. Competitive proposals will have a maximum cost per head of $12,000. Awardees of initial contract may also be eligible for a one-year renewal based on performance and availability of funds. Awarded applicants will have administrative responsibilities, including, but not limited to, the archiving of records, completing monthly reports, and attending required meetings.
The expectation of this contract is it'll probably start sometime in June, and it'll be good for an 18-month period. So just for clarification and clarity.
Quality placement goals. At the conclusion of the grant, PACE grantees will be expected to graduate and place 80% of participants into one of the following outcomes. A minimum of 25% placed into a USCOL registered apprenticeship program, employment related to the pre-apprenticeship training received at no lower than $16 per hour, and or admission into a post-secondary college or occupation-specific career training program consistent with the pre-apprenticeship program. Note that as a grantee, you can include a needs-based stipend in your budget to enable participation. Stipend payments can be paid to the participants on a weekly or biweekly basis, but cannot exceed $250 per week.
If a stipend is something that you include in your budget, it is required that it is provided to the participants minimally biweekly, but it can be issued weekly. It cannot be issued monthly. It has to be within a biweekly time frame. Main reason being is the expectation of the stipend is that the participants need it in order to participate in the program. So we don't want them to have to go too long awaiting the stipend. Therefore, that would be the reasoning for our requirements of minimally a biweekly providing of a stipend.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the federal definition of a career pathway. A career pathway is a combination of rigorous high quality education, training, and other services that align with the skill needs of industries in the economy of the state or regional economy involved. Prepares an individual to be successful in any of a full range of secondary or post-secondary education options, including registered apprenticeships, includes counseling to support an individual in achieving education and career goals, includes as appropriate education offered concurrently with and in the same context as workforce preparation activities and training for a specific occupation or occupational cluster, organizes education, training, and other services to meet an individual's needs that accelerate the individual's educational and career advancement to the extent practicable, enables an individual to attain a secondary school diploma or recognized equivalent and at least one recognized post-secondary credential. And lastly, helps an individual enter or advance with a specific occupation or occupational cluster.
Okay, yeah, I'm in.
S- So as you can tell, the federal definition of a career pathway is simple and simplistic. It's very little to it. Um, at the end of the day, we provide this definition to you because ultimately this is what we work with. Um, yeah, sorry, keep yourself muted if you can, please. Um, and ultimately, our pre-apprenticeship program is a pathway. It's a pathway to a career that is specific to the needs of the participants and also industry and employers throughout the state. So this definition is rather long and involved, but at the end of the day, we provide this to you just so you have a clarity on what the career pathway is.
Okay, we're going to talk about the application process. Your first steps if you're considering applying. Ensure that you're an eligible entity to apply. These page numbers reference the NGO, so you can look on page 12. That the authorized official, or your AO, registers in IGX, and that's on page 21, those instructions. That the authorized official submits a letter of intent via email, you can reference page 21 and 27. NJDOL approves the authorized official in IGX and provides access to the application. That you obtain a tax clearance certificate from the New Jersey Division of Taxation, and you can reference pages 24 and 28. And two, that you register with New Jersey Department of Treasury, that would be NJ Start, and those instructions are on page 28.
So for purposes of our grant, an authorized official is the person who is eligible to sign off on a contract for your organization, otherwise known as CEO or whoever's the signatory for legal purposes for your organization. The AO would have to register an IGX database. We're going to get into that in a little bit. Our IGX database is internet-based database that allows for you to register, apply, and submit your monthly and activity and expenditure reports as we move forward with the process of providing funding. A tax clearance certificate is something that is issued through the New Jersey Division of Taxation. It's good for a 6-month period. So if you have one that you've received that's been received within the last 6 months, you can submit that. You do not have to get a new one, but make sure that it's dated within 6 months of the due date of the application for PACE. If it's dated older than 6 months, then you do need to reach out to Division of Taxation in order to get a new one. I would recommend to you, if you need to get a tax clearance certification, that you do that right away. Sometimes taxation gets it to you in 2, 3 days. Sometimes they take 2, 3 weeks, and it really depends on circumstances that none of us have any understanding of. Some of it is as simple as your organization owes $7 in taxes to the Department of Treasury. Some of it is as simple as they have an issue with your address on file, and it takes a while to get that stuff figured out and cleaned up. I would hate for you to do all the work and apply for this grant and not be able to be considered because you can't get that certification of that tax clearance certification. So please reach out to them as soon as you can in order to get that process started so that you can get that tax clearance certificate as soon as possible and don't have any issues. When it comes to registering with NJ Start, most of you probably already are, but ultimately without that registration, we are not capable of paying you as an organization if you receive funding from us. So it's very important that you get that registration started and you make sure that you're active with NJ Start so that there's no issues with that process, because the last thing we would want to do is provide you with funds and not be able to actually pay you for those services you're providing.
Here is the template for the letter of intent, which is found in the NGO. You want to submit this letter of intent exactly as is after you register in IGX for access.
As you can see, you'll want to copy and paste this data onto your company's letterhead. Make sure you copy and paste it exactly. In that middle section where you see in parentheses, provide your organization's name, please replace provide your organization's name with your organization's name, not just leave provide your, and where it says provide the industry occupation area you wish to apply for, that's where you're going to tell us what your training is going to be specific to. For those of you who aren't familiar with the unique entity identifier, it's a number that it's a series of numbers and letters that took place of the Duns and Bradstreet number that used to exist, that used to have to provide to all of these grants. You get this through sam.gov. We'll provide you with information on the process for getting a UEI number, along with all the other documentation we provide you from this meeting. But ultimately, once you get it, you got to provide it to us because that gets put onto the contract if you receive funding. Um, but everything else here is very basic information that we require of you to provide us so that we're aware of who to contact and what to look for when we're accepting your registration in our IGX database and making you eligible to apply.
So your proposal components, these are the required documents, and all required information must be submitted in the IGX system. Your applicant information, the counties you're going to serve, your consortium partners, any previous funding, PACE deliverables, your program narrative, an executive summary, an implementation plan, a program sustainability plan, your tax clearance certificate, a budget summary and details, and any miscellaneous attachments. So we'll take an in-depth look at the proposal. First is the executive summary, and these maximums are just guide. The project plan chart, which is on page 29 of the NGO, is required, and the overview of proposal highlighting your key points in relation to this NGO. Your program narrative is your training plan, and it details the objectives, your plan structure, and anticipated quality outcomes. Also include the training, design, and outline, work experiences, connection to the registered apprenticeship, connection to employers, post-secondary placement after pre-apprenticeship completion where applicable, retention support and alternative placements, supportive services, your expected outcomes, and administrative responsibilities.
So The information that's provided underneath these sections are the minimally the pieces of information that we're looking for you to include. A projected project plan chart can be found on page 29. You want to include that chart and provide the information that's supposed to be included in the chart. Um, and then all those sections, all those bullets under training plan, you should touch on those, provide details on those, and provide explanation of how your program is going to provide those.
And here is that attachment 3, the projected project plan. So this chart is within your executive summary, and for each quarter of the grant, you're going to enter the following information. The participants to be enrolled, which is the total number of PACE participants enrolled, both new and previously enrolled. Expenditures, you're going to provide the estimated expenditure of PACE grant funds for each quarter of the grant in each of the following categories. Personnel, which is salary and fringe benefits, non-personnel, such as marketing materials, office supplies, and direct student costs, which could be books, instructional materials and supplies, stipends, safety equipment, etc. The proposal. So the implementation plan is to describe how the training plan will be implemented. Your project schedule, which will include timelines for benchmarks and program completion, as well as recruitment and placement dates. And if there are multiple training rounds, you're to include the estimated start and end dates of each, and also a plan for retention activities for the participants. Your sustainability plan is where you'll describe a strategy for long-term success absent of this grant funding. Evaluation criteria. All applications are considered new applications and will be evaluated based on quality, comprehensiveness, completeness, accuracy, and appropriateness to the NGO. This is a competitive process, and applications are reviewed by a selection committee using a pre-established set of requirements. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Bill so he could go over IGX.
All right. So if you haven't gotten sick of hearing my voice, unfortunately, you got to listen to it a little bit longer, but we're getting close to the end here. So as we said, the first steps in this process after attending this technical assistance workshop are to register in the IGX database if you're not already registered, and to complete your letter of intent and submit that to us. That letter of intent submitted through email will provide you with the email. It's actually at the bottom of the letter of intent, but it's also, I'll show you at the end when we get to the contact information where you can email it to as well. For those of you who have been in the IGX database recently for some reason and you've already registered, you do not need to re-register. You could submit your letter of intent, and if there's a problem with your registration, we'll notify you at that time, and you can get it figured out then. But for anybody who has no idea what I'm talking about when I say IGX or anything about an IGX database, that would mean you're going to need to have to register as a new user and create a registration for your organization within the IGX database. That's done by going to the https://njdol.intelligrants.com web address and clicking on new user under the login button. Once you click on new user, it'll bring up this new user registration form that you see here on the right. That form is basic information about yourself and your organization that you'll provide. In that box that you see circled, you'll put inside of that PACE. That's going to make it easier for us to find your registration in the database. We'll just look it up under program name and we can find it easier. Once you've entered everything and entered PACE into that section, you'll click register, and that'll submit your registration for approval. It does not approve your access to the IGX database. It just submits it to us for review and approval. Once you submit your letter of intent to us, that will be our notice to go into the database and look for you in the database. Once we get that letter of intent, we'll go in, we'll find your registration, and we'll approve it at that time. When we do that, we'll then email you a user guide for the application and notification that your application has been approved and that you can start the process of completing the application. That user guide will provide you step-by-step processes on how to complete the application and submit the application for final review. But ultimately, you need to get registered in the database and receive that user guide before your registration for IGX will be approved and before you'll have access to the application. Once you get that email and that user guide from us, You'll then have to log into the IGX database, and I'm going to show you how to start the application at this point and somewhat complete the application. I'm not going to go through the whole user guide, but I'm going to provide you a couple pieces of information. So the username and password that you created when you registered yourself, you'll enter in this login information and click login. Once you do that, it'll bring you to a dashboard page. This dashboard page will have a My Opportunity section to the right. You'll click on the filter button. When you do this, it'll open up the filter section. You'll choose New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development under provider and type PACE in for name. Click search, and under My Opportunities right below the filter, you'll see PACE application 2024 round 2 pop up. When it does, you'll click on that PACE application 2024 round 2 hyperlink, and that will open your application. The first thing will happen is you'll have to agree that you're interested in applying for the grant by clicking the agree button. If for some reason you decide, oh, I just want to waste my time and do all this other process requirements, but I don't want to apply, you can click decline and it will not start an application for you. But if you're ready to start your application, click agree and it will create your application. It'll actually bring you right into your application. If for some reason you decided that you don't have time to complete the full application right now, it's fine. You don't have to complete it in the first time you're in there. You can go back and forth and in and out of it as much as you need to in order to complete it. Just know that when you log back in, you'll find your application under My Tasks on your dashboard. It's listed under My Tasks, and you'll see it's going to start with PACE R2 FY 2024. Then it'll say your organization's name. You'll click on that name and it'll bring you back into your application so you can start filling out the rest of the document. Once you're in the application itself, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to start out at a document landing page, which is going to be basic information about your organization. All those pages listed under PACE application are the application pages that Lauren kind of just went over, where she was talking about what they were and all the required documents. These are the required document pages. Once you complete the page, it'll put a check mark in the box next to it. If there's an error on the page or if something's not completed, you'll have an exclamation point in that box. You do not have to do them in order. You can do them in any order you wish to complete them. Some of these pages you might not complete. You might not have a Schedule A personnel costs, let's say, because your budget doesn't have personnel costs included in it. But ultimately, the only page here that's definitively not mandatory is the miscellaneous attachments page. Every other page here is pretty much mandatory. Once you've completed all of those pages and entering all the information that's required for each of those sections, the first thing you'll want to do is scroll down on that menu where you saw those application forms to find a tools section and click on document validation. You see it in the middle of the page. When you click on document validation, what it's going to do is it's going to check all the pages of the application to make sure there's no errors on any pages. If there are, it'll tell you that you have to go back and correct those edits, those errors. Once you go back and do them, you can click the document validation again until it shows up that there are no issues on any of your pages. When that occurs, you'll scroll all the way to the bottom under status options and click application submitted. When you do that, you'll get this, are you sure you want to submit your application box? You'll click OK, and it'll submit it to us for review. That's the full process for you to complete the application and get it submitted to us. If for some reason you wanted to reach out to us and ask for confirmation of receipt of the application, feel free to do that. I'll give you contact information in a little bit for that. But ultimately, no, once you click that OK button, if under status options you no longer see application submitted available, you should only see application canceled left there, then you should know that your application was submitted. You can also go back to your document landing page, which is listed at the top of tools. Click on that and it'll tell you what your status of your application is, and it'll say documents application submitted as your status. Some important dates for you to take into keep in consideration and make sure that you're concentrating on are that the letter of intent is due by no later than noon April 5th, 2024, and that the application deadline is noon April 12th, 2024. Even though these are the deadlines, please don't wait until April 5th to submit your letter of intent. It'll just restrict how much time you have to complete your application. I would much rather you give yourselves a better opportunity at being considered for funding by giving yourself more time, so please take that into consideration. Also, please don't wait until 11:58 on April 12th to submit your application. Main reason being, you never know what's going to happen. Technology is our best friend and our worst enemy all at the same time. So because it's internet based, if your internet's slow or your computer crashes, we don't want any of those things to negatively impact your ability to submit your application on time. So please try to get it submitted as soon as possible. If you submitted it a week early and reached out to us and said, I just realized that I wanted to edit this page, can you please reopen it for us? We will absolutely reopen it for you. You have until the deadline to submit it, so we won't tell you, nope, it's already been submitted, you can't change anything. You still would be able to change it if need be. So just know getting it submitted to us as soon as possible will allow for you to ensure that you don't have any concerns in the long run about your application being reviewed and accepted um, op- for the opportunity of being approved for funding. What we usually have here is we say within 45 days of that April 12th date, we will hold our panel reviews, get our recommendations through and approved, and get contracts or determinations out to all of our applicants within that 45-day period. I would say by mid to late May, we should get that notification out to you, with the expectation of the grant starting sometime in early June, somewhere between June 1st and June 15th. As I said earlier, this is the contact information for us in the New Jersey Office of Apprenticeship. James Manning is Assistant Director of the Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. Myself, Bill Sarbuck, I am the supervisor of all the grants within this office. And for any other inquiries or to submit your letter of intent or to reach out and ask about if your application was submitted, you can always reach out to apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov. I usually suggest that you reach out to the apprenticeship unit email address for any and all of your questions, because it comes to all of us at the same time, and it allows for us to ensure that an answer is provided to you as timely as possible. By emailing me directly, you're obviously waiting for me to be available to respond, and sometimes that slows down the process. If you send it to all of us simultaneously, it does come to me as well, by using the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov email address. That will ensure a timely response and hopefully allow for you to get your answers as quickly as possible. Don't worry, the I'm going to provide you with this PowerPoint, so you'll get the contact information afterwards. So we're going to move on to questions. So I'm going to start with the chat, and then when we're done going through the questions in the chat and answering those questions, then if anybody wants to unmute or feels the need to ask additional questions, they can do so. All right, so first question. If a state has specific requirements, that I'm guessing that you're saying are different from national requirements, does that affect someone qualifying for apprenticeships? Is there a list of careers that qualifies for apprenticeships? So yes, within your FAQs, we'll provide you with a link to USDOL's website where you can find the occupations that are approved already for registered apprenticeship. You also can find links to who has approved registered apprenticeships in your counties. You can look up by the occupation specific. You can look up by county specific. There's a lot of ways to look up that information. You can also just type into a Google search USDOL approved registered apprenticeship programs, and it'll bring you right to the links. It's very easy to find this type of information, because obviously it's USDOL approved, so it's going to be through their website. But as far as if there are requirements that are different from state to national, so they're all USDOL approved. So um, sometimes there are state specific programs that are approved by New Jersey representatives for USDOL, and those are what I would say you're referencing for the most part when it comes to our grants, because the registered apprenticeship program would be here in New Jersey. There are some national programs that provide services in New Jersey, but ultimately what you would have to fulfill as far as requirements would be the approved program. So if it's a national program, you'd have to fulfill the national program's requirements. If it's a state program, you'd have to fulfill the state program's requirements, but it's based on what that registered apprenticeship program is requiring. But as far as a pre-apprenticeship program, you're preparing them to enter into those registered apprenticeship programs. So you don't necessarily have to think too much about some of the stuff for a PACE grant per se. What successful partnership models have you seen between pre-apprenticeship programs and registered apprenticeships? I'm curious about how we should structure such a partnership. So there have been many successful partnerships. A lot of them are pre-PACE grantees who start their own registered apprenticeship programs, and so they transition their PACE participants into a registered apprenticeship program themselves and make partnerships with employers based on the occupations that they concentrate their trainings on. Others are you know providers, post-secondary providers who are aware of registered apprenticeship programs in their community that are specific to the occupation that they're interested in training in. And I think that it comes down to how strong a partnership that you can develop. And what the needs are of the employers that you're looking to prepare these participants to be placed with. Um, I think it all starts with the job. If you don't know who you're going to partner with to place these individuals, it makes it virtually impossible to know what you need to prepare them for in order for them to be ready to get into that job. So my first step for anybody who's applying for a PACE grant would be figure out who you're going to partner with in order to place these individuals and then work backwards from there, because ultimately that's going to be the best and most successful model, is one that's meeting the requirements and needs of that employer. Um, because at the end of the day, without the placement, your program is not successful. So, will the 1-year renewal option be based on a full grant proposal process? So, first things first, we have that statement in there about 1 year renewal options. We've never done a renewal, so I can tell you that it's very unlikely that we would renew an application without requiring you to apply again in the future. Main reason being we're competitive and a competitive grant process, and we ultimately want to ensure that we make the grants available to as many eligible and interested entities as we can. So we do have a process of providing those with past performance that's been successful with additional points towards their scoring when it comes to applying. um, and that could be something that would happen, but you could also lose points if you've had bad past performance. And so that's within the NGO too. It states it within the NGO, and ultimately it's at the discretion of the program area to decide whether those points are added or subtracted based on the past performance that you've had within those grants. So ultimately, I wouldn't concentrate too heavily on the 1 year renewal. It doesn't happen very often, and if it's gonna happen, we would probably still require you to apply. Do you need a letter of intent for each industry occupation or one containing all? Same with the application. No, you don't need it. You need a letter of intent for each applicant. So if you're one entity that's going to apply and have multiple occupations that you're looking to train in, you can apply with one application with one letter of intent. We usually suggest that you don't directly compete with yourself, because ultimately if you apply multiple times with different organization names, you're competing against yourself. It doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. When, if we are applying for gains in pace when requesting access to IGX in the program we are applying for. Um, it doesn't matter if you already have registered for gains, you don't need to re-register for pace. So you would just submit your letter of intent. And so if you're applying for both, it doesn't matter which one you put in, whichever one you're going to submit the letter of intent on first is what I would suggest. Um, but ultimately, if you're applying for gains and pace, I will say it's difficult to receive gains and pace simultaneously. Main reason being is pre-apprenticeship is a program that prepares the people for a registered apprenticeship, where gains is a registered apprenticeship program. For them to work simultaneously, it kind of doesn't make sense, because how are you placing your pace participants into a gains program that exists at the same time? So, something to take into consideration. maybe even think about waiting, because we do provide gains and pace grants every fiscal year. And I anticipate fiscal year 25, which starts July 1, we would issue anywhere from 1 to 2 NGOs for both grant programs next fiscal year. That's all the questions I have in the chat. Obviously, feel free to enter additional questions into the chat, or ask for additional clarification on any of the questions that I've answered already. Or if at this time anybody would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, please feel free to do so. It's up to you.
Hi, I had a question about I saw in the documentation, the definition of quality placement.
Mhm.
Um, Admission into a post-secondary college or training program that's consistent with the learning acquired during the pre-apprenticeship program. Does that mean that, let's say a pre-apprentice does not get placed into an apprenticeship program, but they decide to enroll at a college, that's an outcome that does count?
It does, but there is a requirement that a minimum of 25% of all your participants enter into a registered apprenticeship program. So that would be 75% of them would be qualified to go into the college program. So yes, it is an allowable and acceptable outcome, but we concentrate the majority of our outcomes on entry into registered apprenticeship, obviously, because it's a pre-apprenticeship program, or outcome of employment at $16 or more an hour.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay, so um, just know that your next steps should be to get that letter of intent submitted to us, and to get registered within the IGX database, work with the Division of Taxation to get those tax clearance certificates completed, and ensure that your registration with NJ Start is active and good standing. Um, and then if you have any questions or need anything additional, you can reach out to us at the apprenticeship unit at dol.nj.gov email address. We did get a question that just popped in. Can we submit for the same category as we are doing for NJ Build, or does it need to be different area? No, you can submit for the same category. Ultimately, it would have to be different participants. So it would have to be in, you'd have to provide different participants in different classes for the participants. But ultimately, yes, you can apply. There's no restriction on the occupations being different, um, or requirement that the occupations are different. Um, But yes, so those would be the next steps in in the process for you. In the meantime, in the next day or two, you'll get the NGO from us, the contact information for USDOL representatives in case you need to reach out to them to schedule or get a registered apprenticeship program started. We'll provide you with how you can obtain that unique entity identifier that we spoke about. We'll also provide you with the PowerPoint that we just went over, a frequently asked questions document, which will provide you with a lot of answers to the questions that we've already spoke about, and a lot of additional information that wasn't discussed. Uh, and then also a recording that'll be at the bottom of that frequently asked questions of this presentation today. Um, if though you have any additional questions, you can reach out to us. There are some questions I cannot answer. There's some information I cannot provide. Obviously, it's a competitive process, so I need to make sure that we don't negatively impact the competitiveness of the grant. So just know that you may reach out and ask a question, and I may have to say, unfortunately, you have to reference back to the notice of grant opportunity. I can't provide you with additional details beyond what it says there. So, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Other than that, I thank you all for your time and for being a good audience. And if there's anything that we can do for you going forward, please feel free to let us know.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
You too.